Oh, by
Coffee.
the way, are we recording it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We need to, let's just do it now. Let's just say cheers to Mike and thank you for the booze.
Cheers.
That
Oh,
he
Mike.
sent
Yes,
us.
that's right.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yay, booze.
Cheers.
Clink. Oh, thanks, Mike,
I want to spill
for
over
my
his
Dutch
mixer.
Brothers coffee. Yes.
I got Bailey's. I'm good.
Thank you so much for sending us alcohol, sir.
Yes, thank you,
We
Mike.
love that, and we love you.
Thank you for the review, and I hope you enjoy the content. All right, so who controlled us with this movie choices
What do
this
you
week?
mean?
Look, I said,
No.
oh, let's do monsters and robots, guys.
You were thinking
There's
like,
a lot of cool monsters and robot movies.
And then he
you
left.
idiots.
And left us on our own to muck it up.
So the way that we work is one person on the crew picks the topic for the week, and then the other three people pick the movies, and the person who picks the topic isn't allowed to pick a movie. So Vader, when we were doing our show kind of pre-meeting for this episode, he picked monsters and robots, and then he pieced out.
He immediately
left.
Out. See you later.
He's like, I've been here for 3 hours.
Don't
I want to
screw
leave.
this up. Yep.
And so when he was gone, we were like, well, what movies have monsters and robots in them?
And I immediately said shopping mall.
Godzilla, Pacific Rim, Forbidden Planet. You want me to keep going? No, I will never say any of these movies that you guys picked today.
I've never heard of any of these movies.
Wolfman.
Shit, you could have picked the frickin' Hugh Jackman Van Helsing. It would have been better than this.
Yeah. I like that movie.
Matt, your topic was too broad.
Yeah.
Jesus.
It gave us too much freedom.
You know, I would even have considered Frankenstein a robot. You know, it's okay.
Well, he's a monster.
Yeah.
But he's got the dome with the things going on.
Well, he was in Monster Squad,
Yeah,
so there you go.
Well, what we got was something else. I'll tell you what.
So this week we chose Chopping Mall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was Jude's pick. My pick was Monster Squad.
And I picked the 1998 Godzilla. With
Bunch
and you
of
would
shit in a
think-
bag.
And you would think that would be a good pick.
I like
it's
1998
but it's
Godzilla.
trash.
It's not trash.
It's
God.
absolutely
It's
trash.
hot garbage.
It's not. All right, let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. I am your host, the Salty Nerd. And today's episode, we're going to be discussing 3 ridiculously bad movies, all having to do with robots and monsters. That's the theme for this week. I hope you enjoy the content. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everybody that if you like this podcast and you want to support it, you can go to saltynerdclub.com. That takes you straight to our Patreon page. We have several different tiers that you can choose from. Pick your price, whatever you want to give us, and we will offer you in return some exclusive content along with some cool stickers and possibly a t-shirt if you give us enough cheddar. So hit us up, go to saltynerdclub.com and help support a great podcast and a bunch of friends talking about movies. All right, let's get started.
The $50 tier is the nude tier.
Oh,
The $100 tier is we won't send you nudes.
so go with the higher one.
Yeah, the $50 tier has Vader nude.
I don't even want to see that.
Just
Come on, man.
very pin-up boudoir.
There we go.
It's like very Costanza from
Yes.
Yeah, our ever been with a big man collection.
I'm working on that shirt. That's
Good.
the next one. That and
you ever been with a big man?
big
Yeah.
man. Do you want a picture of you or do you want a picture of Don Gibb?
Oh, I don't know. We'll talk about it later.
Why not?
Your
why
head
not
on
both?
Donald Gibb's
Why not
body.
both?
I'm getting the whiskers are getting
Yeah,
there.
you are.
They're getting there. They're getting a little crazy.
It's getting there. All right. Topics for this week, like we kind of already spoiled it for you, but we have 3 movies in mind for you. 2 of them are from the 80s and 1 is from the 90s. We've got Chopping Mall, which is Jude's pick, from 1986, I believe.
Yes.
1986.
Looked like it was made in like 1974.
It's pretty rough. We also have Monster Squad from 1987, chosen by Matthew Kadish because he's a Goonies lover.
So this is what the Goonies couldn't be, or tried to be. I don't know.
Exactly the
I don't
same.
even. I'm still like.
And my pick is the classic 1998 Godzilla with Matthew Broderick. It's a fantastic Godzilla movie, Americanized a little bit. It's not really Godzilla, but it's kind of Godzilla. So we'll be talking
fantastic Godzilla movie.
We'll be talking about those three movies this week.
Attack of the Giant Komodo Dragon.
Yes, exactly.
Starring the cast of The Simpsons.
All right, let's get started. Let's start with Chopping Mall, because I feel like out of the three, that was the one that was the most shocking.
Because it was so awesome.
Yes, Jude, why don't you... Jude, why don't you tell us about Chopping Mall and why you picked this movie?
So my first experience with this movie was at a sleepover slumber party, and somebody brought a VHS tape of it to a sleepover, and we just were teenage, maybe, or like preteens, just losing our minds over
I can see that.
how awesome this movie was. And just remembered it being like killer robots loose in a mall killing teenagers.
Very 80s.
Yeah, it's very 80s. I will admit I have watched this movie a lot. I love Kelly Maroney. I follow her on Instagram.
Oh, really?
She's a scream queen. I love all of her movies. I love, what's her name? Barbara. She was the other main actress in it. She's the other very popular scream queen from the 80s. And I don't know. I just
Barbara
love
Crampton.
Thank you. I kept wanting to say Cranston. Yeah, this is a genre that I love. I love cheesy, awesomely bad 80s horror movies. This is just the exact movie that is right up my alley. So basically, a bunch of, it's unclear if they're teens or early adults, decide to have a party in a furniture store in a mall. And these robots are the new security team of the mall, and a lightning storm hits the robot hub and turns the robots into homicidal maniacs.
I love the premise already.
Yeah.
And just things happen after that. Like the robots start taking over.
Things happen.
Things happen.
And that's all you need to know.
How many were there? How many teenagers were there? It was a pretty sizable group to start with.
Six, I want to say.
Six of them?
Yeah,
And they were
couples.
Coupled off. And
Yeah,
they were,
which is also how they died.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, they
think-
died by couples.
Yeah. The second death was the one that got my attention the most.
Is that the head exploding one?
Yes.
Yes.
I was watching.
That's the best one.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, the chick being on fire for like 5 minutes, just that was
In her,
I'm on fire. Yeah.
hey man, that was legit stunt work. Okay.
and her obviously male stunt double.
Yes, it's like doubled in size. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Anyway, so like I was watching this movie, and right away, you kind of know what to expect because it's very 80s. Obviously, the mall setting, that's like 80s.
Yeah.
It was
100%.
super low budget
This
80s.
is the
Yes.
same mall in every California 80s movie.
Yeah, and the setup for these robots were those. I guess it was the mall, the owners of the mall, or the
I think
store owners.
that was my favorite part of the movie.
Was the little
With
presentation
with the two people being smartasses in the audience.
Yeah, that was
When
pretty.
they- yeah,
it was pretty bad though.
And that woman was also in Night at the Comet.
Was she?
Yeah.
Oh, she was the mom.
No, she was the scientist that like killed herself because she didn't want to kill the teenagers.
Oh, okay. Okay, never mind.
Well, that was also a little cameo. Like that whole opening scene there had cameos from other Roger Corman movies, characters from other Roger Corman movies, and that couple basically their names was the Blands, husband and wife team, and they were the stars of this Roger Corman movie called Eating Raoul.
That's right.
And they at the end of that movie, they basically opened up a restaurant, and it was implied that their restaurant was now in the mall. And so like they made this little cameo appearance as the characters from that movie. Like this movie has a lot of Roger Corman references in it simply because it was produced by Roger Corman. But like if you look at the restaurant that the waitresses, that the girls worked in, all the posters are of Roger Corman movies. Was it Night of the Crab People, which was the movie they were watching?
Attack of the Crab People.
Attack of the Crab People. That was a Roger Corman.
We actually
movie.
have that poster on our wall right there.
Yeah. So, like, if you're familiar with who Roger Corman is and like his movies, Chopping Mall is kind of like a much more interesting film than it is just, as a piece of entertainment.
I don't know. I found it pretty interesting.
When I was in film school, I read his autobiography. Roger Corman has this autobiography he wrote called "How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Penny," and he was kind of like the guy who, he never cared about the quality of his films. All he cared about was hitting genre tropes and making money. And so, like,
that makes sense.
So, like, his rules for making movies were like, it must have sex, nudity, violence, and gore. And if it doesn't have any of those things, it must be made for enough money where it's going to make a big profit. So he was kind of the king of drive-in cinema, where like he would just make these like really schlocky, bad B movies that were just made to go to, the drive-ins for like, the double features and stuff. And when the drive-in industry started dying, he was kind of the one who pioneered the direct-to-video movies.
I can see that.
But the interesting thing about Corman was that because he didn't care, he was able to give like major filmmakers their big break. Like Francis Ford Coppola was a Corman protege, and they kind of had this thing called the Corman School of Filmmaking, where basically, if somebody wanted to make a movie, Corman would be like, "Okay, here's $100,000, go make your movie," and then they'd go and they'd be able to show what they could do, and a lot of people, basically their careers got launched because Roger Corman took a chance on them, and it was kind of a big deal. And this movie, the director of it, his name is Jim Wynorski, and he's interesting because he was a film school dropout, and he met like someone on a plane ride who knew Roger Corman, and they kind of set up an introduction for him to meet Roger Corman, and he was like, "Yeah, I'd like to direct a movie." Or no, he was like, "I'd like to write a movie for you." And Roger Corman was like, "Okay, can you do it for free?" And he was like, "Sure." So like he kind of like started working for Roger Corman for like slave wages. And then Roger Corman's wife wanted to try her hand at producing a movie. And the movie was going to eventually become Chopping Mall. And so this Jim Wynorski was kind of on staff. He had already directed like a really low budget film. And she went to him and she's like, "Can you write this movie for me? It's got to be about kids who, are in a mall and they're getting slaughtered." and he was like, "I'll tell you what, I'll write it if I can direct it." And he's like, "I'll write it for free if I can direct it." And so like that's how he got on the movie. And it's kind of funny because like Jim Wynorski, he's gone on to kind of be like the king of like erotic parodies. like he
Explain.
So like he wrote, produced, and directed movies like The Blair Witch Project, the Witches of Breastwick, the Da Vinci Co-ed.
I did
the Breastford Wives.
when I was watching this, I did feel
Cleavage
like
Field.
a lot of the dialogue between the couples felt like really bad porn dialogue. That makes total sense now.
Like the couple that the first couple that dies when she needs a cigarette and she's like, "By the way," and he's like, "What?" She just like shows her tits.
Shows her tits
And
off,
she's
and then he's like,
"Hurry back," and he like loses his mind after. Like I was like, "Bro, you just saw her tits like a minute ago. Are you that blown away by them again?"
They were that good. This is very 80s tits too. This is like
very 80s
very
tits.
80s tits.
Yeah.
Natural.
And it's funny because that couple, those two actors, like 90% of their dialogue was like ad-libbed, I think.
Really?
Yeah. Just those two.
And speaking of Corman, don't forget Walter Paisley, the cameo by Dick Miller.
Oh yeah, the Dick Miller, the janitor guy who gets electrocuted. Like he was playing.
You might know him from The Gremlins.
Yes, he was playing his character from another Roger Corman movie called Bucket of Blood, which was shot, I think, in like one day or something. And it was a movie by Roger Corman, and his character in that was like this like janitor who like helped to helped an artist to kill people and then sculpt clay over their dead bodies to make them look like statues.
Wow.
And the art world would go like crazy over these like statues and
They're so lifelike.
yeah, exactly. So and they also had a cameo from the guy from the Phantasm movies in there, but it was like a very small cameo. Like if you blink, you miss it. I forget his name, but he played the tall man in the Phantasm films. But it's kind of funny because this movie, so it was shot at the Galleria Mall, which is this mall in the Valley area, and it was the mall of the 80s.
Back in Hollywood.
Because the owner of the Sherman Oaks Galleria Mall was a big movie fan, so he just made his mall the most affordable option to shoot in the mall. And this mall has appeared in so many movies, like Terminator 2. That was mall in that movie.
Night of the Comet.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Night of the Comet. And
I think this was also the mall in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie also.
Probably. But it's funny because the exterior shots of this mall are actually of the 3rd Street Mall, which is in Hollywood proper. And I used to go to that mall all the time, and I'd be like, but the inside doesn't look like that. And it turns out that originally they were supposed to shoot at the 3rd Street Mall, but they wanted too much money. So they went to the Sherman Oaks Galleria Mall to shoot this movie.
So let's talk about two things, and I'll let Vader start because he hasn't talked in a minute. Let's talk about the robots in this movie, because that's the whole reason why this movie got picked, was because it had to do with robots. So what did you think about what were they? Did they have a name? What was the name of the robots? Killbots. That's what their actual name was from the presentation at the beginning of the movie?
That's what they referred to.
Suckbots.
They are the security team.
The security team for this mall. What did you think about the robots' design?
I thought they were atrocious. But no, I don't know. I didn't know what to expect going into this movie. I didn't even know what it was about. I'd heard of it, but I never watched it. But the second this movie started, I'm like,
shit.
What is going on here? What is happening? It's like, and then they're doing the whole presentation, and I'm just thinking RoboCop going through my head, and these things are like little miniature Psycho Ed 209s, right? It's like
that's pretty much what they are.
That's pretty much what they are.
And I don't know, it was just funny how they did their thing. It's like they're just chasing people down with their little tank tracks, and they're just like I'm seeing these guys. All I'm picturing in my head is guys with remote controls controlling these guys going through the mall. They're probably having a blast. They probably had the best time of the whole movie making these things, and it's just. And the effects are terrible. The laser beams out of the eyes.
Oh my gosh.
And the head exploding and stuff.
I like how there are these military grade robots patrolling for a mall.
Put down the candy bar. You have 5 seconds to comply. That's what I'm seeing in my head.
Explosives and lasers.
Laser beams.
And like an indestructible chassis.
Oh my gosh,
and
dude.
like the guys in the booth, like the security guys, are wearing like doctors' lab coats. Like they're scientists.
Because every bad guy in 80s movies.
Like, and and the lightning strike, instantly made them intelligent. They're like they're sentient beings now.
Yeah.
And
so like
sneaky
to the point where like it's like, oh, I'm gonna launch this thing out of my chest and miss the guy on purpose so I can light it on fire and with my electrical charge.
And
through the gasoline.
did you guys like clock how they hid all the bodies after they killed people?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Pick them up.
What did they do with them?
They probably ate them. I don't know.
I was like, are they turning them into more robots?
I thought it was kind of funny when they were in the control room, kind of towards the start of the movie, right after they got electrocuted, and the light comes on, and the guy's in the one head, and the guy turns around, and the light goes dark.
Sneaky.
Then he turns around and looks at the other robot. It's like they're talking to each other. The guy like turns around, and it's silent. It's like a cartoon.
That was my favorite part, when the robot physically turns his head around to like eyeball the other robot.
Wink,
like,
wink.
Exactly.
I'm
like
gonna-
wink, wink.
Yeah, I'm going to screw this guy up. And then bam, shot to the back of the neck.
Watch me kill
It's
this guy. It's going to be hilarious.
And it's funny because every time after the robots kill someone, they're always like, have a nice day.
That's their line. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a weird movie.
Campy and schlocky. I mean, I will give it that much. That I can appreciate.
It's everything I want in a movie.
You know,
Well,
I mean,
Vader, I think it would rate higher on your list because it has everything you
it does.
require from a movie.
But it's
had
just so
boobs.
bad.
It had violence. It had
it's like I have several images that go through my head now that I've seen this movie, and one of them is Kelly Maroney running through the mall like she's a track athlete. You know, and that scene where she's hanging off the
from the balcony.
rail. It's like, oh God, I'm gonna slip. You know, and it's just, I don't know. It's just this movie.
It was so goofy. I don't know what else to say about it.
Maybe if I had seen this movie like I should have seen it when I was 16, when it was made.
Oh, you would have been thrilled.
If I had seen it at the drive-in that we used to go to, with a cooler of smuggled in Coors Light, those we used to drink in high school, I probably would have had much better memories of this kind of a movie, but it just wasn't ever my thing.
This is a perfect drive-in movie.
So this movie did not do well in the theaters. It was originally released under the title of Killbots. And
that's where you got that.
well, I mean, like that's what they called it. And they referred to the robots as they were making them as Killbots. So Roger Corman, like, he wasn't happy with the amount of money it made at the theater. So he's like, all right, we got to cut like 16 minutes out of this movie, and then we got to re-release it on home video under a different name.
Oh, no.
And the name has to be like, you know, something that makes it clear that it's a horror movie. And as he's having this meeting with Jim Wynorski and the other guys, there's this janitor in the corner who's like, you know, mopping up in their studio, and he's like, hey, why don't you call it Chopping Mall? And they're like, what? And he's like, well, it takes place in a mall, right? Call it Chopping Mall instead of Shopping Mall. And they're like, you know what?
That's genius.
That works.
What 15 minutes did they take out?
I don't know. So
Was it more sex?
I doubt it. But, you know, the funny thing about this is that, like, at no point in this movie does anyone ever get chopped.
Yeah.
Right.
What do we got? People got exploded, like laser bolts to the head.
Yeah.
People got shot. People got strangled with a robotic arm.
And you know that head exploding thing, like at the end when they're going through the cast, like that's the freeze frame that they show for that actor.
I love that.
So, you know, they re-released the movie as Chopping Mall on home video, and that's where this movie kind of blew up into a cult classic.
Is it a cult classic?
It is, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Really?
I think most
yeah.
Corman movies are. They have their.
Yeah, but this one,
They have their audience. As I point towards Jude.
this one really found its life on home video, and it made, like, it was actually very profitable once they changed the name and released it to VHS.
Huh.
Still making money. Got 4 clicks this week.
Yeah, it did.
Right.
Well, it was on Amazon Prime. So
There's also a kind
for
of
them.
funny Me
I'm
Too.
so glad I didn't have to rent this movie.
You'd have been pissed.
I also I found a funny story by Jim Wynorski, the director of this, who originally they had a different actress cast in the Kelly Maroney role, and that actress ended up dropping out, and he really wanted to date Kelly Maroney. So he was like, I'm going to cast her in this movie so I can try and date her.
There you go.
And that was like his whole motivation for casting.
That is inappropriate.
Yeah. It's very Me Too-ish, but it was the 80s.
It's the 80s. It's a different time. All right. So final thoughts on Jude's pick for...
What's your favorite part? Everybody go around the table and tell me your favorite part of this movie.
My favorite part of this movie has got to be the Second Amendment store in the mall. That is just loaded to the gills
Second pause?
with freaking like military grade shit.
Yeah, like M16.
M16, like everything you could
Automatic
possibly
weapons.
think of as far as weapons go.
And propane.
Do you know how to use that thing? Hell yeah, dude. I saw Dirty Harry like 17 times. Like, that was my favorite part of the movie.
And also, did you catch that Kelly Maroney, like in every movie she's in, her dad was like a
Yes,
military.
yes.
Yeah. And she like knows how to handle
Marine.
firearms. Yeah.
What? My dad was a Marine. She's
Yeah.
like blowing. Yeah, she threw did she throw a gas can or was it a propane
It was
tank
a
or something?
propane tank.
Propane tank, yeah.
Well, it's funny because the store that they got all those weapons from, it was a sporting goods store in the mall called Peck and Paws, and Sam Peckinpah was like this legendary director. He did all these ultra violent movies in the 60s and 70s, most notably The Wild Bunch. And that shot where like the 3 teens are walking with
three
like,
dudes.
the 3 dudes with the automatic weapons and
Yeah.
stuff, like that's like a direct like kind of homage to Peck and Paw's Wild Bunch, because like there was like just a scene of guys with guns walking in slow motion.
Just so happy to see just a dedicated store to just weapons. It was amazing.
Yeah.
That was
military
That was
grade.
definitely an 80s
military grade
trope.
weapons. And that was my favorite part. And also the head explosion was what, like, I really didn't know what to expect. Like, okay, these kids are going to die. Well, blah, 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 whatever. I didn't really think they were going to go that far. They legit, like, just exploded, like Raiders of the Lost Ark exploding head. I'm like, all right, okay.
It just looked like somebody put an M80 in a grapefruit.
Yeah, that's more or less what it was.
Yeah.
But some creative editing.
I do love, like, in regards to the head explosion, like, it's just like you said, like, it looks like a fruit exploding.
Yeah.
But then there's like a squirt of ketchup on the
Oh, my
window.
God.
But then later, when the robot busts through that same window, it looks like a fucking Charles Manson massacre happened against that window. Like, the whole thing is covered in blood.
Yeah. It's creative editing.
Yeah.
It was great.
I mean, it makes you wonder, how much blood is really in your head?
I don't know. Your brain weighs 3 pounds, but that's not filled with
It's all
blood.
gray matter.
6 pounds,
Yeah.
right?
I thought it was 3
Oh,
pounds.
it's 8
Well,
pounds.
your brain weighs 6 pounds. Mine weighs about 2.5. All right. And I got the biggest head at the table.
All right, Vader, what's your favorite part of this movie?
Oh, it's easy. There's boobs. That's
80s tits.
my 1 star out of 5 is only because there's a half a second of boobs.
There's like this orgy scene where they're all in the same room having sex.
It's like the
I was
most
just going to
awkward
talk
orgy.
about that. Yeah.
They're all like within 8 feet of each other, just
What,
banging.
you guys never went to parties like that?
No, I didn't.
That's what we all did. We had sex in furniture stores.
I wasn't
Yeah.
old enough to go to parties in the 80s. Jude, why don't you fill us in on that orgy scene?
Well, in the 80s, I used to pretend that I was older than I was. And yeah, we used to just kick it in furniture stores. And
Yeah, it takes place in a furniture store, and these people are literally having sex in like the
Yeah.
display beds
yeah.
of the store.
Yeah. There's a
they're
couple
having
of
a party.
Except for the nerdy couple. The
Yeah.
nerdy couple was watching a movie, which I guess
But
that
they
would-
did make out.
They did.
Yeah.
But that would technically be us, right?
Yeah, but-
We'd be the nerds in that group. We'd
Notice
be
how
ones-
the virgins were the ones who survived.
When you said that would be us, you like eyeballed me. And I was like, wait, what?
No, like the nerds. The nerds watching the movie. Everybody else is like getting down.
I like how the main guy's name was Ferdy.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Ferdy.
Jude, what's your favorite part of this movie?
I do love the robot eyeballing.
Oh yeah.
I do love the head explosion. And you guys already talked about the group orgy. I mean, I love this movie. Like I said earlier, it's just like got everything that I love in the genre that I love. It's got like, it's super campy. It's got bad dialogue. It's got the horror. It's got the bad hair. Everybody's hair looked exactly the same.
Usually 80s hair is really cool to me. That's when I grew up. But man, this movie, they had every bad 80s haircut in that movie. The big super feather job on the guys,
Yeah.
and it's just like the pseudo mullet feathered look, and it's just like, oh god,
All
Yeah.
the guys had the same hair.
yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
Pseudo feathered mullet. look.
Pseudo feathered mullet.
The
Yes.
obnoxious gum chewing
was
while
like-
he's having sex.
Yeah, it was like Jean-Claude Van Damme's mullet in Time Cop,
Yeah.
except all the guys had it.
Oh no,
Yes.
but that was
With
just-
extra conditioner.
yeah.
Yes. A little bit fluffier.
I'd also
a little
like
bit fluffier.
to point out, just to expand on Jude's point, every one of the movies that we watched this week had the most obnoxious gum chewing.
Yes.
Oh,
That is what all three, like it connects all three movies, is the obnoxious gum chewing.
Yeah.
wow. What a theme. All right, Kadish, what's your favorite part of this movie?
I think my favorite part of this movie is just like the random side characters that we see. Because like we already talked a little bit about the cameos, like Dick Miller and the Blands. But there's this one scene at the beginning where they're waitressing at this restaurant, and there's this random guy there who's just like eating in the most disgusting way possible. And then, like right before they cut out of the scene, they cut to this guy, and he's got like food all over his face and beard and shirt, and he's just like, "Waitress, more butter."
Oh,
And then they cut to the next scene
Yeah,
immediately.
then there's like a smash cut to like the outside of the mall with like lightning. And it was like the most random weird thing where he's just like, "Waitress, more butter," as he's like stuffing food into his mouth. And I'm like, who eats like that in a public?
I forgot about
And then, like, before that happens, they introduce this character. They just kind of like like pan to him really quickly, and the two waitresses like roll their eyes at each other, and they're like, "Ugh, he's always trying to get some skin. Just like give him his food at a distance, if you know what I mean." Like he's so gross, and also he's a groper. And then he's like, "Waitress, more butter."
And it's such an awkward, like, not only shot but like edit. It makes it stand out way more than it should.
I hope we go out to eat sometime all together. So I'm doing it. So, waitress, more butter.
You got to make sure that food just all up in your
And then
beard.
when she brings it, ask her if she's ever been with a big man.
All right, guys, that's it for Chopping Mall 1986.
Butter.
It's on Amazon Prime. If you'd like to check it out for yourself and take a gander at what we were talking about, it's there available to you. Next up, I want.
You're just like, yeah, it's there. It's available.
Watch it if you want.
If you want to watch it, it's free. I don't know.
If you're at the end of your rope and you don't really have anything else to live for.
Ironically, I didn't think this movie was as bad as I was expecting it to be.
Oh, it was bad.
I mean, it's pretty bad, but like it actually had a story to it. Like it was something that like amongst all the bad movies I've seen, this is like one of the better bad movies.
Aw,
It was better than Night of the
babe.
Comet. I'll give it that. Really?
I think so
I
too.
enjoyed
You
Night of the Comet
son of a
more.
bitch. You always try to get me to fight you, Vader. I swear.
All right, next up, before we get started on our next topic, I want to remind everybody that you guys can support the podcast. You can go to saltynerdvideo.com, and that will take you to our YouTube channel, and you can like and subscribe. We have our full-length podcast there, as well as having our podcast cut up into each segment, depending on topic. So if you'd like to go there, you can check out our videos, like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you're thinking, let us know what you want to hear about, and we'll take that into consideration in future shows at saltynerdvideo.com. All right, now I want to talk about the freaking troll job that Kadish did on me. Monster Squad. Kadish, why don't you tell us about this freaking movie?
So this movie is about a group of kids who are really into like the classic monsters.
Okay, first of all, Alex hates children. So please know that as we go through this together.
Kids in movies.
Did you never have like a club with your friends?
I did have a treehouse.
And you never like had adventures
Did anybody
and
come with
fun
you?
stuff?
Yeah, I had some friends that came with me, checked out my treehouse.
Did they exist or were they imaginary?
I was a child once, and I did not like watching other children in movies.
I don't like people. I don't like other kids.
I'm called the salty nerd for a reason.
Did you just hang out with other adults when you were a child?
Yeah, more or less. Well, I'm hanging out with people who are all older than me now. That has been a trend in my life from the beginning. So just keep that in mind. You call me an old soul all the time.
I do.
So
That's just because you're an old cranky bastard.
It's just a thing that people say to people when they're trying to be nice.
Anyway, Monster Squad.
Yeah, so it's about a young group of kind of monster fanatics. They're like a group of like these nerdy outcast kids from high school or from grade school that are obsessed with like monsters. And it just so happens that they live in this small town that possesses this amulet that the real Dracula wants in order to turn the world evil. And so Dracula resurrects a bunch of like kind of iconic monsters like Frankenstein, the Mummy.
It's all the Universal
Universal
monsters.
monsters.
The creature
yeah.
from the Black Lagoon. Yeah. Well, because of copyright issues, they can't technically be those monsters, but they were close enough. So Dracula comes to this small town with his army of monsters to try to get this amulet, and the kids are the only ones who know how to stop him, so they have to band together in order to fight off the monsters and save the world. And it's basically like Goonies with monsters instead of pirates, and it is wonderful.
It's awful.
It is a classic of the 80s.
So bad.
Terrible.
So bad.
I just like how when we were watching, or at least when Alex was watching this, we have this little Twitter DM group, and Alex is like, Kadish, what is this movie?
It's like, Kadish, what the did you do?
He was like, "Dear Kadish, I found a movie that I hate more than Goonies."
I did say that.
Absolutely, word for word, what he said.
Kadish found the movie that I hate more than the Goonies. This movie was worse than the Goonies for me. Like, okay, I'll just talk about this movie for a minute. But
Just get in there. Dive deep.
The first like 5-minute opening scene where there's like Van Helsing and all the monsters. Like, that was the best part. That was the best part of the movie.
They blew it.
The best part of the movie.
It's up to these children.
There's this whole title crawl at the beginning of the movie where they talk about how Van Helsing like led an assault against Dracula to try to defeat the forces of evil, and then the last line of the title crawl is just "they blew it," and then they show you them blowing.
Yeah. What was the point of the crawl if they're going to show us the part of the?
Because it's awesome.
It's just to give you the visual, like this is how they blew it.
Also, did anyone catch that what happened in the beginning, how they like quote unquote blew it, was exactly what they did in the end of the movie?
Yeah, because this movie sucks.
It's exactly the same ritual.
Well, the thing is that they succeeded in creating the portal, but they didn't kill Dracula. That's why they blew it.
Oh, okay.
They didn't put all the pieces together.
Van Helsing got sucked into the limbo portal, and Dracula was able to escape. And then Van Helsing's assistants took the amulet and immigrated to America, and that's where they hid it to keep it away from Dracula. And that's like the whole premise of the story. Is that?
Thank you for clarifying that, Kadish, because the movie did not make it clear.
Yeah.
Was that the same portal that showed up in the end of Evil Dead?
Close.
I think it was.
Fucking mashup. Okay. Can we talk about the freaking?
Okay, Alex has his hand over his face right now as he's talking
He looks
about
physically
this movie.
pained.
This movie is so bad. Like, they didn't even get the monsters right.
Well, they couldn't.
They're so campy and terrible. No, I was watching this movie and I'm like, okay, well, that opening scene I thought was actually pretty fun. I was like, oh, Van Helsing, there's monsters, there's this demon portal. Say, all right, I'm in. And then kids. And I was like, God damn it. So I'm watching this and I think I wanted to say one thing I did like about this, the relationship that the father had with his son, where he's like, Dad, I want to go to the movies.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to go tomorrow. And the dad came home after work or something and they sat on the roof together and ate a burger and watched the movie. I was like, man, that's a good dad. Like, I was like, all right, cool. I dig it.
Yeah. And I liked that interaction in the bedroom too, where he was like, basically like, kid, you're a pain in the ass, but I love you.
Yeah.
And he was like, Dad, I'm a pain in the ass, but I love you too.
The father-son thing, I really did appreciate it. It was cool, but the rest of the movie is trash. One of the things that I hated the most and I thought was just horribly done, and I'm trying to remember it so that I can describe it good enough, because when I was watching it, I was like, oh my God, I can just imagine being on set, right? So they have, when they finally wake up all the monsters, and Dracula finds Frankenstein, and he's still in the coffin, and he's like, wake up, my friend, and he holds the lightning rod in the air. Just picture it. You got the camera guy on the crane dolly, and they're like, okay, we're gonna crane out, and I want you guys just to kind of like celebrate that Frankenstein's awake, and all the monsters just kind of like do this like random little jig, and they kind of just they just kind of like, yes, our friend is back, and they just kind of like dance back and forth a little bit while Dracula's there, like holding his spear.
I felt like the Wolfman was particularly like gyratey through the whole movie, like as Dracula's trying to like dig through this wall, like Wolfman is just like humping the air as he's like taking a hammer to this wall trying to break through.
Okay, and this will be it. After this, I'll let you guys talk about it. But the other thing that makes, and this is I think a trope with just kids movies in general, and why I hate movies with kids in them, is because everybody else has to be so incompetent to make the kids look smarter that it just irritates the shit out of me. These monsters, when they have these kids cornered at the end of the movie and they're like about to kill the kid, right? They take out all the cops are dead, right? The monsters come and just wipe out the whole police force, but these kids stay alive, because the one in particular that was the worst was the Swamp Thing, and it was chasing the fat kid with the shotgun.
His name was Horace.
This movie.
As the fat kid. As the fat kid, I was totally offended at this fat kid.
Dude, this movie was vulgar as they were talking like dropping some crazy 80s bad words that we can't say
Very
anymore.
un-PC words.
Very un-PC words.
Oh yeah, there was like F words and stuff, right?
The one kid blackmails his sister with a nude photo that they took of her.
So creepy.
It's like
anyway,
when the older brother from Younger Years was accosting the fat kid at the beginning of the movie. That's what we're talking about, right? It's like, wow, that's a mouth on that kid.
for like it's like aimed at.
But you know what? What back in the 80s, nobody would have blinked an eye.
Anything goes.
Nowadays, with everybody, you know, so
I was like that.
hyper offended at every little word
They
that
need a
comes out of their
disclaimer
mouth.
at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It says outdated terminology.
whoa.
So I know Kadish is aware of this, but are either of you aware that there is actually a documentary about this film? It's called Wolfman's Got Nards.
I might have to actually watch it.
And it is impossible to find. We tried to find it, and we can't find it.
They defeated the Wolfman by kicking him in the nuts. Oh my god. Okay. Anyway, so before we move on to that scene where the swamp thing was chasing the kid, and it was literally just walking extremely slowly.
Oh, welcome to every zombie movie.
Yeah,
Chill
it's
out.
not a zombie. It's the swamp thing.
Still,
And
he's not
chasing-
used to being
It's
on
not Swamp
land.
Thing either. It's the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Whatever. It's the
But,
Get it
but in
right.
this movie, it was the Gill Man.
the water monster guy. Abe from what's that? movie?
Hellboy.
I was just like, I'm like, how can in any way can this be considered good?
It actually reminded me more of the creatures from Aquaman that live down in the pit or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Kind of reminded me of the Oscar-winning movie, The Shape of Water.
I haven't seen.
Okay, I'm done. Kadish,
He's got his hand over his face again. He can't take it.
why did you pick it? Did you pick this movie
He
just to
hates
troll me?
children.
Did you just troll me with this movie? Is that why you picked it?
No. This
You
is
legitimately like this movie?
We love this
This
movie.
is a wonderful film.
We probably watch this movie once or twice a year.
You actually think it's good?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually it's a cult classic
Yeah.
from the 80s.
Yeah.
This movie was co-written by Shane Black, and in the year that this movie came out, Shane Black had just sold his script for Lethal Weapon, and he was acting in The Predator, and so like this was like kind of the trifecta of Shane Blackness. And
His
Tell him, babe.
His Predator movie sucked, by the way.
well, I'm talking about the '87 Predator. So
The newest one that Shane Black directed sucked.
Oh,
yeah,
it's terrible.
it was terrible. He also wrote that one too, oddly enough. But like this was back when Shane Black was writing good movies, like the guy who co-wrote and directed this, his name's Fred Decker, and he's been Shane Black's longtime collaborator, so he's had like a hand in a lot of Shane Black's movies. And it's kind of just it's a fun movie. Like their whole premise was they wanted to kind of take the Little Rascals and pit them against the Universal monsters. And they originally pitched the idea to Universal, and Universal turned them down. And so in order to use the monsters for the script, they had to change them by up to, I think it was 15 or 20%. So like they couldn't make them look just like the monsters from the Universal films. So like the Frankenstein, for instance, instead of having bolts in his neck, they had them in his like forehead, his temples.
Yeah. But these monsters are all like public domain, right?
Well, the characters are, but
Yeah.
like the look of them had to be different from the because originally the idea was to take the classic Universal monsters,
Yeah.
and have them, in the movie.
Dracula looked like he picked up his outfit at Party City. It's just
Well, they all kind of did, to be honest.
Actually, funny enough, this is like one of the more iconic Dracula looks from this movie because the actor just nailed it. Originally, Liam Neeson was going to play that role.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and this was before Liam Neeson was Liam Neeson.
Thank God he didn't. Never would have heard of him after that.
But the guy who got the role kind of just nailed it, so they went with him instead.
Nailed it?
Yeah.
Who is it?
His name is
It doesn't
I
matter.
want to say it's Duncan.
It doesn't matter what his name is.
Duncan Rager.
yeah something.
Okay.
But the guy who did all the creature effects for this movie was Stan Winston. Like all these, like the
Get the out of here.
no, yeah. This was a Stan Winston joint.
Well,
he
he's got to make some.
he did
got to work.
Yeah, he did the Wolfman, the Mummy, he did all the creature effects in this movie. And I don't know, like this movie to me, like when I was a kid and I watched this movie, like I wanted to be in the Monster Squad. I wanted to go out and fight
yeah.
monsters. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I think if you grew up in the 80s, you have like a special place for this movie in your heart because it was initially a box office failure due to the fact that like it was too scary for its audience. and it was too dumb for the adults.
Alex, I swear to God, quit scrunching your face up and huffing under your breath about this movie.
I'm trying not to cut him off.
To be honest, though, there's other movies out there that are Witches of Eastwick is like a kid's horror movie done well.
No.
Yeah. My kids love that movie. And this is kind of like the same era, right? I mean, within probably 5 or 6 years of each other. I don't know.
Witches of Eastwick was very
No.
adult.
I'm talking about Hocus Pocus. I'm sorry. Yeah, Hocus Pocus, not Witches of Eastwick. But
Yeah, I was going to say that's.
Yeah. Say, what did you have your children watch?
yeah, I'm still waking up. But I can tell you straight up, my kids would hate this movie, but they love Hocus Pocus.
Well,
and to me in my head, it's kind of the same kind of vibe to me. But
what's funny is like when I was growing up, so I was too young to see this movie in the theater. So I wasn't able to go and see it in the theater. But this movie found its audience on home video, and so like I saw this movie on TV and in home video, and like being a kid, it was scary. I think that this movie when I first saw it initially gave me nightmares of just like the shadow of like the wolf man coming back together after he gets blown up and stuff like that. Like
Mommy came in my room.
Yeah. Oddly enough, remember that kid who said like the mummy's in his room? That's David Faustino from Married with Children, as like a little boy.
that's kind of fun.
That's a deep cut.
Yeah.
That's a deep cut.
But like I just feel like there's so many elements in this movie. Like as I watch it as an adult, like I can appreciate more. A lot of the humor works on an adult level. It's funny because like all the kids in this movie, like you have kids who are like smoking and like taking like spying on women as they're changing clothes and taking pictures of them and using foul language.
I did all those things when I was 14.
Well, yeah, but like in the 80s, there were no movies that showed kids like that. And this was kind of like one of those movies where like they actually made an effort to show the kids as kids were back then. And it was I just thought it was interesting. It made it stand out and made it edgy. Like looking at it now in this day and age, it's not quite as edgy as it was when it first came out. But like I can appreciate the evolution of this movie. And I don't know, like I just think it's a good movie. Like it's not high art by any means, but it's entertaining and it's a great concept. And there is a community of people out there who just like are rabid about this movie. As Jude was telling us about this documentary that the actors of the movie actually made. They had no idea like how big of a fan base this movie had until I think about 2006.
Yeah.
Where Ain't It Cool News held like this special screening at the Alamo Drafthouse, and they were able to get all the cast and the director and writers to come and attend it. And it sold out. There were lines around the block, and they started doing like more screenings of this movie, and more people were flying in from all over the world to come and watch this with like the cast.
I find that amazing.
And they started making a documentary on it, and they just found out that there's this huge community of monster squatters out there who just grew up on this movie and are fanatical about it.
Wow.
Just like I can see why that people would kind of do that, but I don't know, those weird little fringe fandoms. I don't know. In my head, I'm having a hard time seeing this movie pick up the cult following that you're describing there. If it's a movie like, I could see it if it was like Lost Boys or something like that,
which came out the same year.
Yeah, which is a much better movie. There's a weird little cult fan following for the saxophone player from that movie.
Yes.
I know who that. I forgot this movie existed. Kadish, I did. I didn't even remember it was out there, and I don't think I ever even bothered to watch it back in the 80s because, there was other better kid movies back then, like the Goonies, that were, actually fun. This movie to me, it was hard to get through. It really was. It was really hard to get through. It was just
like when we were watching it, Jude was actually quoting lines before they happened.
Oh yeah.
And like, I'm a fan of this movie, but even I can't do that.
Wow. It's like the creature effects were terrible. The Wolfman, I just laughed at him because it's like, oh, we're going to watch him change into the Wolfman in the telephone booth. It's like, oh, let's just have 3 little quick cut frames of different stages of his makeup, something a high school film critic could do with their phone. It was harder back then, I guess. But I don't know. Just this movie did nothing for me, but kind of annoy me.
I like how the little kid wrote in crayon a letter to the army.
Dear Army guys.
Yeah, dear Army guys, please come. Monsters are attacking.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then at the end of the movie, the army actually shows up, and he delivered it via a dog. Like he just gave it to his dog to deliver. And the army guys actually show up, and they're like, "Okay, son, where's the emergency?"
Yeah.
And they're like,
Where's
"We took care of it."
Eugene?
Yeah, we took care of it.
Who are you? We're the Monster Squad.
Yeah.
They're all proud of each other.
Cut to music.
Oh, all right, Jude. Why are you such a fan of this movie? You're quoting it like you've seen it that many times?
Yeah, I can probably quote most of this movie start to finish.
Wow. Talk to me about this movie. Make me. You're not going to be able to.
I'm not going to do it. I feel like the pod is officially split down the center.
It absolutely is. Yeah. There's a wall in the middle of this table.
There's pro Monster Squad versus anti Monster Squad. I love this movie. And I mean, you guys know I love campy horror movies. I've never found this movie scary. So I disagree with that point that it was like too scary. I just have always found
too
it
scary for young kids.
Yeah, okay.
Like our
No,
kids,
but I don't think so.
our 6-year-old wouldn't be able to watch.
I'd let my
Okay.
6-year-old daughter or grandkid watch this, no problem.
Yeah, I don't know. My kid watches Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that this would be any worse than that.
Well, monsters are different than dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Like you literally have a wolf man who gets blown up and his severed body parts meld back together. You have people getting shot. You have people getting staked through the chest.
What is the rating of this film? Is it PG-13?
That didn't exist back then, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think.
No, wait. PG-13. PG-13 was after Indy 2, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Temple of
After
Doom gave
Raiders.
the PG-13, which
It was PG-13.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love this movie. I think it's, again, awesomely bad and terrible in the way that I love. It's campy and I love it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Monsters, vampires, check.
What's your favorite part?
Come back to me. Let me think about
Okay.
it because I love the movie start to finish.
Okay.
I think the scariest monster to me was
I got it.
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
Dracula's wives.
Oh my God, the slow walking
The slow
chicks
walker
in white
chicks.
Yeah,
Yeah, at least they were kind of scary looking. It's just like
My favorite part, which Kadish has heard me quote this like time and time again. You guys, I saw a scary German guy.
Scary German guy.
I love the little sister.
Oh, the little sister. God. When she's like, "This is my friend Frankenstein,"
Yeah.
and he's like, "Hello."
And it was very E.T. when Drew Barrymore was like, "Here's my friend. He's an alien. I'm going to dress him up." And
See-
Phoebe was like, "He's okay, you guys. He's friends with us."
When Dracula calls the little 4-year-old a bitch, I was like, "Damn!" Then Frankenstein comes in. It's like, no.
She's like, "You have to let me in the club because Mom said so. Else it's prescription." He's like, "That's discrimination."
See, that was my little brother. My little brother is like 4 years younger than me, so he was always trying to tag along with me and my.
I was
were
the
out
little
doing that
sister.
stuff. Yeah, you're
and
probably a real pain in the ass.
Yeah, I still am.
well, it's funny because the guy who played Frankenstein, Tom Noonan, who you'd recognize him. He was in Manhunter.
12
He
Monkeys.
was the killer in Manhunter. He's been in tons of stuff.
Yeah.
He was method acting while he was doing this movie. So he was always in character as Frankenstein. And so all the kids, he wouldn't interact with any of the kids because he was in character, and the kids were when they met him, when the actors met him at the reunion in 2006, it was the first time any of them had ever actually interacted with him as
Tom Noonan.
As Tom Noonan.
Yeah.
It was just,
Plus, he was on set hours before them getting
Yeah.
ready to be Frankenstein because of the child labor laws. The children could
Yeah.
only be on set for so many hours, and he was there getting makeup for 8 hours before the kids even arrived. So he was fully in character by the time the kids
I
arrived.
think it was more like 4 hours.
Whatever.
But that scene where Dracula picks up the little girl,
Yeah.
and calls her a bitch and stuff. It was funny because the actress at the time, she was a little girl, and the Dracula makeup was scary to her, so they kept Dracula away from her for as long as they could. And then he had these red contact lenses and stuff that were kind of meant to freak her out. So when they're lifting her up on the little platform where it looks like he's lifting her up by the face. Her reaction, like her scream, was like a genuine like thing of fear because
she was not acting.
Because like he like opened his eyes and like hissed at her with like his teeth, his pointy teeth, and she was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
and
there's an interview with her, and she's like, "He hissed at me." Like as an adult, she's still like, "He hissed at me."
Traumatizing kids since 1987. Monster Squad.
Yeah, but I mean, like
direct to DVD.
like this was a movie that was very much kind of like the young boy's fantasy of like having like a club of your friends and you fight monsters. And there's like I had the biggest crush on that big sister growing up.
Everybody did. This babe is a major.
Yeah, she was major. And I actually think this was the first time I actually saw a girl in her bra in a movie.
Well, what about Back to the Future?
I don't know.
Oh, that was a 1950s bra. That doesn't count.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, like this was like like a hot teenage girl, and like they're like staring.
She's
at
kind
her
of
through the
slutty
window.
because turns out she wasn't a virgin.
Yeah, exactly. Steve doesn't count.
Steve doesn't count. What? That was legit. I did chuckle at that part.
It's girl logic. A lot of girls think that way.
I have said that.
He doesn't count.
That guy didn't count.
The laws of the occult. That's not how that works.
It was just butt stuff. Doesn't count.
Oh my god.
And I love like all the nicknames for characters like creepy German guy or scary German guy.
Scary German guy.
And fat kid. Like poor Horace. Like nobody knows his name. They just call him fat kid.
Fat kid.
Even his friends, they're like, "Hey,
oh
fat kid."
man, fat kid farted.
God, this movie's awful. All right.
Fat kid.
Final thoughts.
Totally
His
offended.
name is Horace.
His name is Horace. Final thoughts.
His name.
Yeah,
Horace.
that's a T-shirt right
Close
there.
Oh, good Lord.
We should do a T-shirt with the three of us or the four of us doing like Charlie's Angels poses, but it says his name is Horace.
I've got my guns I can bring over. Whatever. Anyway, final thoughts on this movie. I was kind of like, God damn
Love it.
No.
I'll watch it again right now.
I legit watched it and I was like, I would rather watch The Goonies. As much as I hate that movie, I think it's more tolerable than this one.
Good enough
so bad.
for you.
That's all I have to say. I don't want to trash it because you obviously love it to death. So I don't want to
Well,
trash
you know
it
what's
too
interesting?
much,
I didn't even think about this until Jude started singing. Is that this movie, like the score for this movie, actually makes it feel a lot more like timeless because they stayed away from a lot of the 80s synth and pop songs that were kind of popular at the time. They went with a more classical
that
musical
classic
score.
rap at the end.
Well, there was that, but I mean, like
We're the Monster Squad.
yeah, throughout the movie though, it's like a very standard orchestral soundtrack.
Vader, what's your final thoughts on this movie?
Vader wants to kill himself.
He's checked out. He's just surfing Twitter right now.
He's playing games on his phone.
Yeah. It's just another 1-star crap fest as far as I'm concerned. I'm really like wondering in my brain why we do a podcast with these guys. No, I'm joking.
They're just going to keep picking this.
I know.
Terrible
It's like, that's
80s
it. You're
movies.
banned. You're banned for picking.
Part of the fun of this podcast is getting to torture you guys.
Yeah.
Well, I did.
I'm crying.
One of my missions of this podcast was to watch movies I'd never
Yeah,
seen before
me
and
too.
talk about them.
Me
So
too.
here we are talking about fucking Monster
1-star crap fest. So we're gonna
Hashtag 1-star crap fest.
we're gonna have to put a collection of
Can somebody please
Matt
give
and
us a
Jude's favorite
review?
movies going forward. Yeah.
We should.
Somebody please give us a review and tag it 1-star crap fest.
You'll get a T-shirt. I'll give you a T-shirt for that one. Give us a 1-star review. 1-star crap fest.
No, give us a 5-star review, but say 1-star crap fest. Don't give us a 1-star review.
All right.
No, it just felt like a bad Goonies knockoff with
Yeah, it did.
monsters that they probably shouldn't have been allowed to touch.
Nailed it.
Yeah,
That's what makes it great.
that makes it bad. It's a bad movie.
Bad movie. Shame on you.
No boobs.
All right, Kadish, final thoughts on this movie. Why did you, okay, I asked you this once. I'm going to ask you again.
Do you really mean it that you like it?
Did you pick
I'm
this
giving you a
movie?
chance to change your answer.
Trolled.
Did you pick this movie because you legitimately love it, or did you pick it just to troll me?
Well, I had no idea you'd respond this way to this movie.
Really?
The whole the theme for this week's podcast was monsters and robots, and to me, when I think of monsters, I think of like the classic Universal monsters, and this was just like a fun movie that I remember very fondly. And the nostalgia factor for this movie is a big thing for me as well, because I grew up on it and I loved it growing up. So like Jude said, like we watch this movie like maybe once a year, something like that. And I just thought it'd be a fun movie to talk about because Shane Black's involvement, the whole cult following that this movie has accumulated over the course of decades, the classic monsters, the Stan Winston makeup, the kid actors. Like I genuinely love this movie. So I just thought it'd be fun to talk about it since it was kind of keeping in the theme of monsters and robots.
All right.
You keep being you, man. It's totally cool.
You do your thing, Katish. That's what you're good at.
Hey, this was better than Godzilla.
No.
I agree.
It was not. All right. Last but not least, before we get started, I wanted to let all the listeners know that you guys can go to saltynerdpodcast.com. That takes you to our podcast directory, whichever platform that you use, whether it's Android and or Apple. You can go there, and we'd love it if you gave us a 5-star review. If you give us a 5-star review and comment your thoughts and just let us know what you're thinking about the podcast, we will send you some stickers as a little thank you for giving us that review. It always helps bring more eyes to the podcast. Give us some reviews, give us some attention, and we can help bring more people on board to the Salty crew. That's saltynerdpodcast.com. You go there, give us a 5-star review, and you get something in the mail. Thank you guys very much. Moving on to my pick for this week's Monsters and Robots. I picked Monsters, which it's a guilty pleasure movie of mine. I understand that a lot of people don't like it. However, I enjoy the hell out of this movie. And it is Godzilla, 1998 with Matthew Broderick. And I don't know, man. I saw this movie when I was a kid, and I think it was right around the time I obviously love Jurassic Park, and this has a lot of ties to that dinosaur era, movies and stuff like that. And I loved it. I thought it was cool. I loved the effects. I liked the characters. I thought Matthew Broderick's character, the worm guy, I thought he was cool. He was funny. It had some Nick Tatopoulos.
That was the run. Yeah, I can't even say it.
Topolakova.
Yeah,
whatever the guy's name is.
Baklava.
And I liked all the relationships with the characters. I fell in love with the adventure, and I thought it was really cool. And I thought the story itself was interesting. And I wasn't attached to the Godzilla franchise in any way, so I really didn't know that it went so far off of the rails when it came to following that, that classic Godzilla. I had no idea what that was. The real Godzilla from Japan. I was like, okay, yeah, it's just a monster. I didn't know that there was a whole, you have to follow these directions in order to make a Godzilla movie, and this just went the completely opposite direction. I didn't really realize that. So when I watched it, I just took it for a cool, interesting, fun, I thought it looked great monster movie. Running through the city, crashing through buildings, and digging holes in Madison Square Garden and stuff. I don't know. I fell in love with it, and that's why I picked it, because I feel like this movie needs to be defended by at least one person, and that's going to be me.
You're going to be its champion.
You hate Goonies, but you love Godzilla 98.
Yeah, there's no.
You make no sense.
There's no stupid freaking kids killing monsters in this movie. All right, let's go around the table real quick. I gave you guys the reason why I picked this movie.
Aren't you going to set the stage?
Oh, sorry.
What's this movie about, Alex?
This movie is about. It's named Godzilla, but like I said before, it's not really in line with the classic Godzilla storyline. What happens is sometime in the late 50s, early 60s, I believe, the French Polynesian nuclear tests had created a side effect.
Which all happened. That's based on
that's based on real stuff. And I love the opening sequence to this movie.
That's the best part of the movie.
It's great. The music, the setup, where basically they're using these...
Best part of this movie was the end.
True.
When it finally happened.
So what happens is the French Polynesian nuclear tests have a side effect that these iguanas, these native iguanas to these islands out there, had become irradiated while still in the egg, and that caused them to grow abnormally large. And what it does is it sets up that over the course of the last, 40 years or so, this thing had grown to an enormous size, and it had become Godzilla-sized, and it was starting to attack some large industrial fishing boats. And that kind of perked the interest of what? What do you got to raise your hand for? What's the matter?
Was that the only egg that got irradiated?
We don't know. Supposedly, yes. It's the only one that survived the nuclear explosion.
Okay.
So anyway, it gets the attention of the U.S. Army. They start tracking this monster that's crashing its way through different islands and different areas and leaving trails of destruction. And they're tracking it, and they end up finding it back in New York City.
New York City.
So they get in touch with a nuclear scientist.
You're really dragging this on.
I don't know. I'm just trying. Like Nick Tatopoulos, he's a guy who studies.
Godzilla goes to New York to lay some eggs in Madison Square Garden because obviously Madison Square Garden is like a nest.
Yes,
because there's no other fucking basketball arenas anywhere else in the world. And
it's an island surrounded on all sides with water.
Alex's review of this movie is as long as the actual movie.
With an abundance of hiding places.
You got to stop.
They get a guy who studies nuclear science and the effects on animals to come and figure out what the hell's going on.
Worms at Chernobyl.
He's a nuclear biologist.
The worm guy. And,
baklava.
Things ensue. Destruction ensues. And, then the French CIA or the French Secret Service come and try to clean up their mess because it's, technically their fault that this is all happening. And I think those are my favorite characters.
The French.
The French guys, the French Secret Service guys.
They're the guys who chew the gum to make him look more.
Yeah. Makes us look more American.
Thank you very much. Elvis Presley movies. He was the king. I love it, man. And their little interactions with each other when they're in America and they're like in their little UPS truck and they're like, I thought you said this was French roast. Oui, senor. Oui, senor. Oui, monsieur, it's French roast. He's like, more cream.
we need a T-shirt that says "We Senor." We Senor.
I'm getting my languages confused.
No more Baileys for you.
Yeah, sorry. Oui, monsieur, French roast, and he's like more cream.
It's just like you call this a croissant.
Yeah, we're no croissants. Yeah, we.
He said donut.
Donut. Yeah. It's great. I love this movie. I think it's funny. I think it's fun. I think except for maybe a handful of parts,
except for like most of it is really fun.
The graphics still hold up today.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
They do not.
When that initial attack happens and he's coming through the city and the mayor's got his little thing going on and all you see is like the leg come down and it's crashing through in between the buildings. I was like, dang, that still looks good.
Okay.
It still looks good because they use practical stunts for a lot of that stuff. That's why it still holds up. The only parts that don't is the CGI parts, but they use those sparingly.
Or like the story.
What's wrong with the story? Tell me, what is wrong with the story?
Where to begin?
Oh, here we go.
Go ahead. I'll try and defend.
I'm gonna go to the.
Yeah, you got 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Talk about how bad the story was.
It's not that bad.
Vader, you want to go to a bar?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be back. We'll be back in like 2 hours, you guys.
Kadish, what did you think about this movie?
I don't like this movie.
Oh, Kadish fell asleep twice watching this.
I did. I had to
we watched it and he slept through it, and then he tried to watch it again without me, and he slept through it again.
I slept through less of it the second time.
Good for you, babe.
That Madison Square Garden section where you have the mini Godzillas running around as like the Jurassic Park raptors. So
much fun.
It just kills me every time. But
in a bad way, Alex.
This movie is actually quite interesting to me in the sense that there's so much surrounding it that makes it educational, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Here we go. What happened behind the scenes?
And Kadish means it's interesting in the way that, like, when you're talking about a person you don't like and you can't think of anything nice to say about them, you say they're interesting.
It's interesting like a car accident. What is
what's
the physics of a car accident? How did this happen?
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Exactly.
Mike from Human Resources? Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
He's a character. Go ahead, Kadish.
So this movie, Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich, were behind this movie. And it's kind of funny because last week we talked about Independence Day, and that's a classic. That's a fantastic movie. And they were kind of riding high off the success of Independence Day when they got tapped to do Godzilla. And I don't know if you guys remember the marketing campaign behind this movie, but it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like they put out a teaser trailer like a year before the movie of like Godzilla's foot stepping through like the, Museum of Natural History and crushing a T-Rex skeleton.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And then they had that tagline that says size does matter.
Yeah.
And everyone like flipped out over that. And leading up to the release of this movie, like it had so many different tie-ins and like you couldn't go anywhere without seeing an ad for it. And it was just like the hype for this movie was so big, especially considering the fact that people like flipped out over Independence Day.
And this came out 2 years after Independence Day?
Yes, 2 years after
1998,
Independence Day. And so like the expectations for this movie were really big. And plus Godzilla was just like kind of like a household name. Like everyone knew who Godzilla was and they were kind of excited to see like an American version of Godzilla.
Big expectations.
And then they actually saw the movie and the movie was horrible. There's so many odd choices in this movie. Like first of all, so Sony had been trying to get a Godzilla movie made for like, I want to say like 10 years. And the company that kind of owns the rights to Godzilla in Japan is Toho Pictures. And so throughout the course of the development of the American version, like Toho basically had to get final approval on stuff. And they had a script that when Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin came on board, the second half of the script was basically Godzilla fighting a other huge monster called like a griffin or something like that. And Roland Emmerich, the director, he read the script and he's like, I don't get it. Why are we spending so much time with two monsters fighting? I don't find this interesting. I want the more human view of it. And of course, like someone who thinks that way just does not get Godzilla. Like he literally took out the big monster fight at the end of the movie because he didn't understand Godzilla or the fan base of Godzilla. And so Toho was kind of like, well, he made Independence Day, so maybe he knows something. And then they come with the creature design for Godzilla, and the creature designer for this was actually a guy named Tatopoulos, who they named the main character of the movie after. And they came up with this like kind of quasi Godzilla like creature that we see in the movie.
It's the thin Godzilla.
I think that's probably my biggest bitch about this movie. Is this not Godzilla?
So
it looks nothing like it.
Like the Toho guys had to approve of the Godzilla design, and they had certain guidelines where like, you had to have the spikes on the back, you had to have like, this and that. And when they saw the design, they were like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
They're like, this isn't Godzilla. And so like they basically said like, give us a day to think about this. And so like after they presented them, the new Godzilla design, the Toho guys got together and they were like, we've been trying to get this American version off the ground for like 10 years. Are we really going to get hung up over this design? And so the next day they basically said like, if we were to do any like small changes, it wouldn't matter because it's so radically different from what we want. Yeah. So they were like, instead of fighting it, we're just going to and sign off on it. So like they gave them, the Toho guys gave them their blessing and they went off to make the movie. And this movie is so weird because it's got like half the cast of The Simpsons in it. You have Harry Shearer, you have Hank Azaria, and you have a little cameo by Nancy Cartwright. And you have, it felt like Roland Emmerich wanted to work with certain actors. And so they just created parts so they could work with the people that they wanted to work with. Jean Reno, for instance, the main French guy. Mm-hmm. So like he was really big coming off the success of The Professional. Yeah. Which
Natalie
was
Portman.
Yeah, which was Natalie Portman as a child and Luc Besson's kind of like some would call it his masterpiece. Gary Oldman, bring me everyone. Everyone.
Yeah. Great movie.
So like Roland Emmerich wanted to work with Jean Reno, and so like they had to figure out a way to get a French guy in there. He wanted to work with these comedic actors from The Simpsons. Originally, Matthew Broderick had been approached to be in Jeff Goldblum's character in Independence Day, and he had some type of
That
would have been radically
That would have been
different.
interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, like he had commitments to Broadway at the time, so he had to turn down that role, but they still wanted to work with him. So when Godzilla came around, they went to Matthew Broderick and they're like, "Hey, are you free?" And he was like, "Yeah." So the weird thing about this movie is that I'd say the first fourth of this movie is actually really good, and that's where like they're kind of setting the stage for Godzilla, where there's this mystery of like, what are these big footprints, like what's coming our way, and like we never get to really see the monster head on. And then he makes like landfall in the city, and just the rampage
I
starts.
love that first scene when he comes and the guy's on the pier fishing. He's like, "I got a big one," and it's like this giant wave with the spikes coming out.
Yeah,
I love it.
and you know, it's very much Independence Day-esque in the sense that the first act of that movie is all kind of build up.
Yeah.
And so like this kind of followed the same thing where there's like this intriguing mystery, and you know, you're building up to it. But the weird thing is like the tone of this movie is so radically off, because it's trying to take itself seriously as like a realistic, like what would happen if Godzilla came to New York. But then they use nothing but comedic actors in all these different roles, and the actors are not very good, and they're not very funny. And
I laugh.
and it's weird because, like, for instance, the mayor of New York and his assistant
Oh my God.
were basically caricatures of Gene Siskel and Robert Ebert, or yeah, I think that's their names. Siskel and Ebert, basically, with the whole thumbs up, thumbs down thing. And it was just like a weird, like, creative decision for Devlin and Emmerich to do that. And it's kind of funny because I watched the Roger Ebert and the Siskel and Ebert review of this movie, and they did not take this very well.
I gotta up my game.
Yeah.
I watched the Roger Ebert review on TV from. Do they have like
On YouTube.
reruns of?
Yeah, they have
their old show?
They have
That's
segments
pretty
of it
cool.
on YouTube.
That's pretty cool.
But you know, they were kind of like bashing the movie, and then they were talking about, and this has nothing to do with the fact that we were lampooned in this movie. but it felt like the mayor character and his assistant Gene were just put in there just so they could make fun of Siskel and Ebert. So like, and then the
Did
worst.
they give Independence Day a bad review or something?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
Maybe they were just trying to give him a little jab.
They might have given Stargate a bad review or something like that.
Oh,
but
okay.
The worst part about this movie for me is just that. So you have scenes where Godzilla shows up and just starts running rampant through the city, and then he just disappears. And it's like you got like a 50-foot lizard that nobody knows where he went.
Bigger than 50 feet.
Yeah, it's
A couple hundred.
Okay, 500 feet.
There you go.
No,
And
it's not that tall.
and basically
It like hugs the Chrysler.
This Godzilla is like a quarter of the size of what Godzilla is supposed to be.
Yeah. But he's
anyway,
slim.
giant lizard.
Mom, Dad, please don't fight.
So and they needed to make Godzilla go away so they could have moments where they could like kind of like progress the story along, because
Have some bad dialogue.
most Godzilla movies are just about this monster rampaging and the destruction around it, and and have bad dialogue and terrible character moments.
Like what? Be specific.
Nice guys finish last, don't you
I
know?
love that New York couple. That I don't know. I grew up in the New
That's
England
my
area.
husband. I'm gonna kill him. Oh, look, you guys!
Get back here, you retard!
I got two accents.
I love that part.
Pretty much everything that Matthew Broderick says.
No.
Yeah, it's stupid.
No, it's not.
Oh yeah, you really hate Matthew Broderick in this movie.
Oh, terrible. I was like, I wish he would just be Ferris Bueller.
Yeah,
this movie.
I think that's what we all want. I think that's what we all want him to be, is just Ferris Bueller in every Matthew Broderick movie.
And then everybody would be like, well, then Matthew Broderick only plays Matthew Broderick in every movie, like how they do with Keanu
true.
Reeves.
That's true.
Like the best actor in this movie was Hank Azaria, but like
love him.
after he got stepped on, like he was just relegated to shouting stuff. Like that scene where he realizes he's still alive and he's just like laughing, like that was brilliant. But then like everything he does afterwards, like the characters never make you feel like there's anything dangerous or at stake here. Like every time they come face to face with the mini Godzillas, they're just like, oh, we should be filming this, instead of being like, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Like
It's very hijinksy.
Did they?
it was very hijinks.
It was very Scooby-Doo.
They made everybody leave the island, right?
No.
Well, they evacuated the city, yes.
So I mean,
And
Okay.
the weird thing is, like, the military is trying to keep Godzilla confined in New York, and it's like, why? You want to get him away from the city?
So they're trying to kill him.
Well, I know they're trying to kill him, but like they
So
were
if
like,
they
we
can-
gotta close down all the tunnels and stuff like that. It's like, wait, wouldn't you want the big monster to get away from the city into a more open space so you have an easier time of targeting him?
No, it would be harder to target him.
And like how
In open fields?
Open fields where?
Like to the north of New York?
No, he'd be in the ocean. He'd just disappear. They'd have to track him down again. They know where he
They'll
is.
just shoot him with submarines. No big deal.
Just getting him out of the city alone would have been their priority. Like realistically, because of all the destruction. But what kills me about this movie is that all the destruction is caused by the military trying to kill Godzilla as opposed to Godzilla. Godzilla, like he steps through things, and it's kind of funny because sometimes he leaves like foot impressions in the concrete, and other times they're like, "Fuck it, we're not going to put it."
And his tail whips around and knocks some windows out.
Knocks some windows out.
But like the Chrysler building got destroyed by
that was a great effect though.
By the freaking
that was
like military missiles and stuff like that. And
because they were using heat seekers, but he's cold blooded because he's a lizard.
no, I get the idea, but the whole point is that as a Godzilla movie, Godzilla should have been the one destroying stuff instead of the U.S. military. And it was funny because when I saw this in the theater, I saw it on a base theater when my dad was kind of stationed in Massachusetts. And so
that's why Matt's like, that would never happen.
Yeah.
well, I was watching it in the theater full of Air Force guys, pilots.
Oh man, I bet they were pissed.
And
They were.
and in the scene where Godzilla's chasing the helicopter through New York, every single pilot in that theater yelled "pull up" at the same time, because like he's like flying like through like the city streets, and he's like, I can't shake him, and they're just like, pull up, go up.
So I thought about that because you've said this to me before, and I thought about it while I was watching it, and I'm like, maybe, just maybe, if he pulled up, he would lose just too much airspeed to get away, and he would get chomped. Maybe that's what he was thinking. I don't know.
The weird thing about this is like Godzilla, as big of a monster as he is a ninja in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Like he just shows up out of nowhere.
Tunnels.
He's a burrower.
But I mean, like, you can't have a monster that big burrowing somewhere without knowing where he's burrowing, because he's going to leave a hole.
Very true.
Well,
Remember when he comes up from beneath the street where Matthew Broderick sees him for the first time? It's like, you just follow those holes.
Well, there's so many of them. Once they go down there and look, and they're like, there's tunnels all over the city. We have no idea which one he's in. And they're looking for him actively. And they're going through the subways. And there's that one scene with the soldier, and he looks over, and he's got his flashlight up against the wall, and he doesn't see anything.
There are enough people in New York City where, like, you could track where this monster is just based off of, like, people reporting in, like, where they've seen it.
They're all gone. They evacuated the city once.
Yeah, and the fact that everyone's standing outside the city, like, let me in my apartment. I'm a New Yorker. I want to get back in there.
Are you kidding me?
Yo, your apartment's gone.
I love the looters.
Go stay with your cousin in Jersey.
Hey, Eric, you know that really bad feeling I get when something really bad's going to happen? I'm getting that feeling right now.
Yeah.
That was great. I love the like hijinksy comedy in this movie. I think it's so like
One man's comedy is another man's garbage.
Yeah, that's what I think is actually like the worst part about this movie is like tonally it's so inconsistent. Like, does it want to be a comedy because it's filled with comedic actors and these
comedic
like
moments,
kind of lighthearted moments?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like they're trying to make like a legit disaster movie, and it's hard to take it seriously.
Well, Independence Day had a lot of comedy to it.
Yeah, but it never undercut the threat of the aliens. It never undercut what was happening, like the
And the thrill of the story.
yeah, the humor in Independence Day was kind of like the seasoning on a steak. Like it just made it better. This it like detracted from it because it just made the tone so inconsistent. Like you didn't know like it. The first fourth of this movie, the opening of the movie, felt very serious. Like the movie was taking itself very seriously, and then all of a sudden, it just stops taking itself seriously.
I think you described it perfectly. It's very Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
it really is. Like when they start getting chased by the dinosaurs, by the Godzillas.
No, you had it right the first time.
It's dinosaurs.
The raptors.
by the mini raptors.
The raptors with the really big jaws. The bad underbites.
Baby Zillas.
And it did feel like this movie was trying to be a Jurassic Park movie because, I mean, it came out off the success of The Lost World. And, this was like their big, dinosaur movie. But the biggest thing about this film, which I find interesting, is like it is the epitome of the Hollywood blockbuster idiocy that was at its peak in the 90s. Like you had that Jimmy Page song with basically it was, the Led Zeppelin song with Puff Daddy going, over the
Puff
entire
Daddy
thing.
did a music video for this movie.
Yeah, and at the time, the '90s, the big rap singles were the thing that made tons of money. So they were like, oh, let's get a Led Zeppelin song and have Puff Daddy just grunt over the whole thing.
So it makes me wonder, with the new Legendary movies, those are Godzilla movies.
Yeah,
Godzilla's 600
Huge.
feet tall.
Yeah.
He actually breathes fire or whatever radiation
Nuclear
breath
radiation.
and stuff, and and they fuck up cities. I mean, those cities are done.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever living in those cities again.
Vader.
And
We
it's
saw
just-
King of the Monsters together in the
Oh,
theater.
I love the new Godzilla movies, man. The whole universe they're building is so much fun, But that's the exact opposite of what this movie is.
Yeah.
This movie, every decision they made was bad. It's just a bad movie, and it's just.
If it wasn't named Godzilla, if it was like just named,
If it was Attack of the Giant Komodo Dragon, okay, then maybe it would have been a little bit better. At least you would have known what you were getting yourself into. There. But this was just a piece of shit. And I
disagree.
Yeah, like the
think
real
it's so much
Godzilla
fun.
can't be hurt by
it's
bullets.
like
and
those
missiles and
those
stuff.
4 missiles that they killed this one with at the end of the movie. He would have just flicked off with
he
his
would have
finger.
laughed.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this is like
That's
a
not
more
Godzilla.
This is a more realistic take on it
Why?
because he's an animal.
Why do you have to have a
like
realistic
It's established
Godzilla?
throughout the movie that this is just an animal.
It's like, oh, we're Americans. We're gonna
It's
take
that-
Godzilla and we're just gonna screw it up. It's just
Matthew
no good.
Broderick says in the movie, he's not a monster.
he's just an
He's
animal.
an
It's
animal.
the same theme as Jurassic Park.
Which is
But
a
that's
slap
not
in the
Godzilla.
face
That's not
of
I know, I understand
Godzilla.
that, and that's why I don't defend this movie when it comes to like, well, it's not Godzilla. Like, no, I get it.
And
It's not.
and I felt like Godzilla kept changing size.
Yes,
I think he
I
does.
felt
Very
like in some scenes, like when he's walking past the news building, he's like 600 feet tall, and then when he's running across the bridge at the end, he's like 50.
Yeah,
There's
consistency.
It's like they use different models and different scales and stuff. It's just like none of it made sense to me. And
this movie actually ruined the careers of Devlin and Emmerich for all intents and purposes. Like they never actually recovered from this, even though like the movie made like 300 million worldwide, which was considered a disappointment. But after this one, I think Devlin and Emmerich kind of went their own separate ways, and Emmerich made other terrible disaster movies that haven't been good, and Devlin kind of got back into TV, and he's done some kind of like crappy TNT shows and stuff.
I don't know. I enjoy this movie. I enjoy the humor that it has because I don't know, maybe because I like Scooby Doo too, but I don't
how
know.
dare you?
I thought it was funny.
What's your favorite part, Alex?
My favorite part of this movie, oh geez, I like O'Neill as a character.
What? He was the worst character.
He's so funny.
Which one is he?
He's the bumbling army sergeant.
army guy that keeps making mistakes, but is trying to like do the right
Oh
thing.
yeah, well at least okay.
My favorite part of the movie.
You
I think
identify with him, don't you?
the initial attack, just because I like the way that they filmed it with an actual like miniature city with a guy in a suit walking through, and like the destruction looks real. I think that still holds up. And I think the final chase scene where they're in the cab and Godzilla's
With the worst CG ever.
yeah, the worst CGI ever. When Godzilla's pissed that they just murdered all their babies, and he's like, "Wah!" He looks angry like that. I don't know.
I'd rather watch the scene across the bridge from Escape from New York again. Nobody gets it.
No,
It's like, what?
it was a better scene in Escape from New York.
Yeah.
and they get inside of his mouth and they stick it with an electrical cord to get him to open it.
He's got a cavity.
Vader, what's your favorite part of this movie?
I don't know.
Come on.
1-star shit fest. I don't have a favorite part of this movie. I really don't.
Nothing.
I looked at it after I'd been watching it, and I figured it's because it felt like 2 hours. And I go, oh, I've only been watching this turd for 45 minutes, and it's got another 2 hours to go.
Is it that long?
It's
like
2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's
Damn.
super long for.
It blows by for me.
Way too long.
I don't even notice it.
Way too long. It seems longer than it is because it's bad, but also it's way too long for as bad as it is.
I also had a huge crush on Matthew Broderick's girlfriend in this movie, Audrey.
Maria Patillo.
She was cute.
Gorgeous. So
Her hair is my favorite part of this
I
movie.
love her hair.
Yeah.
Too bad she can't act.
She was fine. I love her.
She was not a classically trained actress.
Little ditzy blonde moments. I love it.
She was a very cute girl.
There's really no parts of this movie that I can say was my favorite. I didn't like it.
Wow.
Kadish?
I'm very, very close to Vader on this one.
Did you like the little nap that you got while you watched it? Is that your favorite part?
I actually think like pretty much everything with Jean Reno in this movie was my favorite part. Because
I love the gum chewing.
Yeah, the gum chewing was epic. But like just as an actor, Jean Reno is just fantastic.
He's great.
And the whole like kind of culture shock thing where like, you know, like they're French and sophisticated and they're just like, look at these American croissants.
Dumpy Americans.
Yeah, I thought you said this was French roast.
They don't know how to make coffee.
Oui, senor.
Oui, senor. That was my favorite part of it. Oui, senor.
T-shirt.
But, you know, like the movie, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but it is so emblematic of like just everything that was wrong in Hollywood in the 90s. That, you know, like this Hollywood blockbuster mentality that they had that kind of made movies stupid. And
yeah, you know, I remember being excited for this movie. I'm like, cool, we're finally going to get like a modern take on Godzilla movies. Because, you know, before this, Godzilla movies were like the guy in the rubber suit from Japan. Those are fun, but, you know, they're Godzilla movies. But I wanted to see a modern version of this like we have now.
What we got.
I wanted to see what we have now then. And I was angry when I left this movie. I'm like, what is this?
You weren't alone.
Yeah, it was just a pile of crap, man. It was just...
It's like The Last Jedi of Godzilla movies.
Yeah, kind of.
I remember seeing this movie when it came out. I saw it on like DVD or VHS or something.
That's going to be the freaking thumbnail title. I can already tell.
The Last Jedi of Godzilla movies.
And I remember like being excited for a Godzilla film and just being like very bored through it. I think I ended up just like doing housework while it was playing.
It's a very boring movie.
It really is. It really is.
I'm in.
It's not exciting.
I'm in 100% from start to finish, guys.
But
it's not funny enough to be a comedy, and it's not exciting enough to be like a disaster event film.
I guess the best of both worlds.
I always try to understand where you're coming from because I feel like we're at odds a lot in what we like. So for me, I compare this movie to something like the movie Constantine, where with Keanu Reeves, where like the source material is very loose, and they just kind of made their own film out of it. So for, like that is like there are people who are like, oh, you know, I get that it's like very loosely based on the content, but it's still a great movie. And then there are people who are like, this is garbage. So I feel like they're very comparable in that respect.
Yeah.
So I try to understand where your head is with this.
I make sure with any movie that I like that is generally seen as a bad movie, I don't blame people for not liking it. I get it. You guys all make completely valid points. I get it. I'm not going to try and be like, this movie's a masterpiece. You guys are all just jerks. Like, no, it's. I like it because it's fun.
Well,
I mean,
because we know why you like it. You like dinosaur movies.
I love dinosaur
and this
movies.
is a dinosaur movie.
You also do really
Godzilla.
take it personal when we don't like what you like, but you have no problem talking mad shit about anything
personal.
we like that you don't like.
But the thing is funny, you look around this table, we all like our own versions of bad movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for real. I mean, there's a ton of terrible movies that I love. This just isn't one of them.
Well, I mean, name a perfect movie.
Empire Strikes Back?
Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I could say that too. See, we all agree on what's
Raiders
perfect.
of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, yes. See, we all agree on what's perfect. We just disagree on what's bad. I happen to enjoy the heck out of this movie. I think it's a guilty pleasure is what I call it.
1 star shit fest.
One star shit fest.
1 star. Yeah.
One short crap fest.
Oui, senor.
That is going to be the new shirt. That's going to be great. I got to figure out what to put on it. Like I got to get a picture of his character with the army helmet on.
Well, you got to get a picture of Dracula, one of those mall robots.
Yes,
and Matthew Broderick. Is just going to say 1 star crap fest.
Not Godzilla.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Godzilla.
The skinny Godzilla,
or a picture like an iguana.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny about this movie is that the people at Toho and the people in Japan hated.
Well, they should.
With like 7 passions. Yeah. In fact, they even made a Godzilla movie where the real Godzilla fights this Godzilla
God.
and kicks its ass in like 10 seconds.
I don't think I've ever
wanna
seen
see
that.
that.
Yeah. I do. I want to see that.
I do too.
Next week, can we
And
watch
it was
that
just-
movie and then also the documentary on Shopping Mall or
it was
Monster
just
Squad?
like Toho basically was like, "F you, Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich. This is what we think of your Godzilla."
That's completely justified. It should not have been named Godzilla. I'll give them at least that much. Like, you should have just went with the generic monster movie, and I think it would have been
Attack of the Killer Iguana.
Yeah, something
Spot
like
on.
something.
You should have at least
Iguana.
had like a monster versus monster part in this movie if you wanted it to be a Godzilla film. Like the whole idea that we're going to focus on the human characters and not the giant lizard is mind-boggling to me.
Well, there has to be. And well, that's another discussion for another time. But I think they're
You've never seen a Godzilla film, obviously.
the old ones.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Okay.
I'm not like sitting like taking notes while I'm watching
So,
it. But
so you
That
know,
was
like
mean.
the human
Yeah, there's-
stories are just like, it's like whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
that's very much what the King of Monsters one was like. Like the humans were there, but it really you could just take it or leave
They're
it.
just following the big guys around.
Yeah, yeah. And I think wasn't that what the first one, the 2014 one, got criticized for because like
Yeah.
they just dropped the whole plot line.
That movie doesn't get good until Breaking Bad guy kicks it. Really, as far as I'm concerned.
Really? I thought that the parts with Bryan Cranston were the best
I
parts.
mean,
of
I
that
don't
movie.
get me wrong. I don't hate that movie. I mean, there's a lot of good part of that movie, but once they get to San Francisco, that's when it picks up. But I just like
That's
Carnage,
like
the last half hour.
Yeah. That
Oh,
movie-
and the Vegas scene is killer. I love it when that thing walks through Vegas. But that's a different movie for a different review. So
Yeah. We'll do good monster movies next time.
yeah, it'd be fun.
All right, guys. That's it. Those are our 3 movies. You can catch them all free if you have Amazon Prime and Netflix.
Yeah,
for,
don't spend any money
Godzilla.
on these movies.
Yeah, don't.
That's right. We didn't spend a dime this
No,
week.
we didn't this week.
But we bought a lot of booze. Thanks again, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. You guys can catch, like I said, you guys can catch those movies if you want to watch them, just so you can get some context for what we're talking about. But yeah, thank you guys very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you'd like to hear more, you can go to saltynerdvideo.com and check out all of our content there on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there. And if you're listening to this on a podcasting platform, please leave us a review. And if you leave us a 5-star review, you will get some stickers in the mail.
If you contact us,
If you
and give
contact
us your,
us, yeah. You can email me at saltynerdpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know that you left a 5-star review. I'll verify it, and then we'll get in touch. Yeah, let's do the socials. Matthew Kadish, where can they find you?
At Matthew Kadish, Kadish, on Twitter and all the other socials.
Right on. And Matt Vader 74, where can they find you?
You just said it. Matt Vader 74 on Instagram and Twitter, and also it's the same Matt Vader 74 on Twitch. I am 5 follows away
Ooh, getting
from
closer.
getting to that affiliate level.
Last week you were 18.
I kind of had a little meltdown at my real life job this week and went on a little Twitter rant.
Snap back to reality.
And it's like, oh my God, this real life stuff sucks.
Yeah.
I want to play video games for a living. So
Right on. You guys can support him. Go to Twitch, Matt Vader 74. You do World of
Warcraft, and there's other stuff coming too. I just, that's just kind of my,
Okay.
kind of what I'm into at the moment.
Right on. And Jude, where can they find you?
At I am Juju on the socials.
Right on. All right, guys. Have a great night. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.